Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on Out of Character. This is our second show, and it's a show where your favorite creators drop out of character for an hour to talk with game designer and host Marc Tassin, that's me, about their art, their process, and the stuff that inspires them, oftentimes nerdy, which is like the rest of us, everything from fantasy to science fiction to things of that sort. And so we're going to talk about all of those sorts of things, including the secrets behind their craft, the ins and outs of the business, to the shows, games, and books that they can't get enough of. And it's a unique and candid look at the people who create the stuff that you and I love. Now, comments are open throughout the show, and although we can't make promises, there's a good chance we'll pull some of your comments and questions in as we're going along. So, without any additional preamble, I am thrilled to introduce Out of Character's guest this week, an author who really needs no introduction, Terry Brooks. Terry, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm getting my sea legs here on the show, and it's fantastic to have you here with us today.
Well, I have to tell you that it's been an interesting day for me because I have endured weather of the sorts that are very foreign to the Pacific coast. And today we had hailstorms on and off all day, followed by sunshine, followed by more hailstorms. And I'm just looking out the window right now. The sun is coming out for the first time in the last, hour. And it might stick around for a while here, but we've had really strange weather this day.
Well, it looks pretty fantastic out there at this point. And I do know that sun is something on the Pacific coast that sometimes you don't get enough of.
Well, down here in Oregon, we don't see a lot of sun, but we don't see a lot of bad weather either way. The temperatures are very moderate, especially on the ocean where I'm sitting. We see weather that will get down to 40, but not very often. We will see weather that will get over 80, not very often. Mostly it stays in those middle numbers, and it's pretty much the way I like to see my summer, winter, fall, and spring. It's just right in there. And we have flowers here all year round.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I love it.
We definitely don't. We have snow at Easter and all sorts of terrible things here.
I remember that. Thanks. I remember that from my younger years.
And can you actually see the ocean from your house there?
I'm looking at it right over there.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
It's about 100 feet away.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we're on a bluff, in a wooded bluff that overlooks the ocean, so I get to see it all the time. And it's one of the reasons I have this little cubicle area here. When we built this house, I got this cubicle area, which is my wife's is probably 3 times this size of this one. Mm-hmm. But mine has the advantage of seeing woods all around me on this side, ocean over there, not much else.
Well, let me ask you something. So this is your writing space, is that right?
It is. I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at my computer and there's no writing on
it. just me.
Just you.
What I'm wondering is, a lot of folks spend a lot of time thinking about what that space is like. Is that true for you? Do you have to have things a certain way? Or
yeah, I've written in every conceivable form of place over the years. In the early days, whatever I could afford was where I was going to have to write. And I've written in many a bedroom, let me tell you, and I've got stories about that. But now I've got a little bit of leeway that I didn't have before. So I like having the desk space arranged in a particular way. I like to have whatever notes I'm working on, I want them on my right-hand side. I want my reference surfaces cleared up and available whenever I have them. I want to be able to close up if I need to. I tend to be I'm not a writer who works well with noise, and that includes music. I like music. I listen to music all the time, but when I'm working, I want it to be very quiet. And and this is particularly getting true as I approach my 80th year, and I'm thinking that I'm wearing out in terms of patience with the sounds like trucks with Jake brakes going and things like that.
Right. Well, I actually have a pair of noise canceling headphones that I keep.
Well, there you go.
Reason, right? Just because the voice for me is super distracting when I'm writing. I mean,
you have a nice comfortable chair back there too.
I do. Oh, and the green one? Yeah, that's my favorite spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom got that at a garage sale and brought it in and says, "You want this?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. That's fantastic." Well, one of the things that I want to talk about is, first I'm going to say the word Shannara just so that everyone can say, "Oh, good, they finally said it," because I know there's some people literally waiting for us to talk about that. We'll talk about that some more, but one of the first things I wanted to talk about is the fact that, your writing goes beyond that, right? That's not the only thing you've written. You've written a number of different series and worlds like Landover and the
Word
Void,
Void, yeah,
right? And
yeah,
then your new series that you've been writing as well. The first book was Child of Light, and I have
right.
a nice picture of it here. So,
There it is.
yeah, and so that's the latest thing you've been working on.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh no, 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 no. I'm way past you.
okay,
I've written 2 books since then.
okay,
I wrote 2. One of them I turned in about 2 months ago, and the other one I'm going to be turning in this week. That the second one is one that I've been working on for 3 years, so it
oh
doesn't
wow,
quite fall within the year-long purview that most of them do.
hmm,
But the part of the problem is that when I was writing the Shannara books, I was writing, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And it was pretty easy to map out the progress of everything that was going to happen and to figure out the time frames and all of that. Now I'm switching over to doing things that are smaller in scope. And I probably won't get another 40-book set written in whatever time I have left. So I have to figure, look at it realistically is what you really want to do and what you think is going to work the best for you. So the way you put it together and frame it up is much different.
Well, and I imagine that it's a completely different experience writing in a new world
Yeah.
versus one where you have all those years of backstory that you have to take into consideration as you're writing.
It is very different, especially the first book. And I can tell you that I wrote the first book, started it actually right after the COVID business came along. And I did it because everything shut down.
Hmm.
I was supposed to be celebrating the publication of the final book in the Shannara series. This is, 40 years later and 40 books.
Right.
And that all got canceled. And they said, no, there's not going to be any party. No, you're not going on tour. No, we're not going to do this.
Oh man.
So I just it what came out, it was over. There was nothing more to say about it. So, I did a
Is
few
it disappointing? Was it
things.
disappointing not to be able to have that sort of
Yeah, it was
celebration at
done.
the end
So
of
then
that
I
process?
sat around, for about 3 months and trying to figure out what I should do next because I didn't really have anything to do next. I sort of thought I could live off of my acclaim for this final set of books, but that wasn't working out so well. So just one day I said, I got to write something. So I sat down and I wrote the first sentence.
Hmm.
And that was all I had. And I said, all right, where does this story go from this first sentence? And then I sat it out in different places and, the way we do with formatting and so forth and put the story together. And then I started writing it and I wrote the book in 4 months.
Oh
And
wow.
you can see I was into this book 100%.
Yeah.
And I loved this book. And I gave it to Judine. And then I gave it to Ann Grohl and gave it to Ann Sibbald, my agent and my editor. And they said, this is the best thing you've ever done.
Oh
And I
wow.
said, wait a minute. What are you telling me? It's too late to say that. Anyway, I got it done really quickly. And the book after that took a little bit longer, of course, because you can only do that once in a great while. I did it with Running with the Demon also. That was a
Mm.
book that I wrote very quickly. But, you get inspired in that way once in a while. But
And
in
is it
this
Child of
case,
Light
it
that you're
was good.
referring to?
What?
Is Child of Light the book that you're referring to that you wrote in 4 months?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I knew what it was going to be all along. I was just a case of saying, well, what's the logical thing that will happen next? Well, it's this. All right, let's write this. And there was no time spent sitting around and debating how the
Mm.
story was going to go because each chapter told me just exactly what the next one ought to be. And because I was so fired up about it, I think I just wrote it right through it.
Wow.
It was
That's
kind of
fantastic.
it was one of those gifts that you get once in a great while. So I'm not holding my breath waiting for the next one.
So one thing I always wonder about is, they say, "Hey, this is the best thing you've ever written. Go write another one."
Yeah.
How does that feel, right? What's the pressure that when something like that happens, when they're like, go do that again?
I live with pressure all the time. I got a family full of young girls, so I know about pressure. I think the answer really is seriously that
Hmm.
I've been doing this for so long. I've been writing professionally since '77, which is
Hmm.
a long time ago. Let's just say, don't do the math. And so I'm comfortable now with the idea that every book is going to be a challenge, and I understand the challenges, and they're always going to be different, and it's not going to be the same. And I think later this year, when I go to a convention for the first time, I'm going to give a talk about the important lessons you need to know for when you're my age, about
Hmm.
where you're going to be and how it's going to be different from where you are right now, no matter who you are and what you're doing. And all the things you think will always be the same are not going to be the same. Even in the publishing business, we know that.
Oh God, yeah, right. I mean, there's been so much change in so that actually I'm sort of curious, how has that affected you? I mean, you're an established author with beloved books, but the publishing industry has still got to be shifting under your feet. I mean, how has
Oh,
that?
absolutely. The big problem I have is I said, I'm not going to write Shannara again.
Mhm.
And people said, uh, well, various things. Some people said, great, we're so happy that's over with. But mostly they just said, okay, well, what are you going to do next? But you have to break people into a new set of books in
Yeah.
order to get them to be interested enough to purchase the book or even to read the book,
Hmm.
because they are so locked into what you've done over those last 40 years or whatever, that they're not really eager to go charging into something else. And I had to spend some time thinking about how do I make this something that people will remember and they'll feel good about doing. And that takes, a certain amount of relaxation on your part in order to carry it off. And you can't spend a lot of time sitting around worrying about whether it's coming off the way you want it to, because you'll drive yourself crazy.
Yeah. I think one thing that's interesting is when people think about writing and the arts, they often think about it from almost a hobbyist perspective as opposed
Mhm,
to the career perspective. And I think
mhm.
it's a very different thing. I know Piers Anthony once, they said, how do you get, you know, inspired before you write? He goes, I just write because that's my job, right?
Oh, Piers, you
Right.
lie.
I mean, let me ask. I mean, is that how you function? Do you have like a schedule and you get up and start writing when you get up in the morning and
No,
just go
I'm
with
not
it?
that guy. I've never really. I was that guy in the beginning when I first started out, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody in the field, and I didn't know anything about uh, this. I'd never had a writing class in my life. I
Hmm.
just did it for fun, and that had been it. So I had no really organizational skills at all, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I did have Lester Del Rey, who said, "You don't have to know it because I do, and I'll tell you how to do it." All right, fine. You tell me how to do it. But I really did have to bear down and learn the proper way to do it. And the first thing I did in the first couple of years was I wrote by outline. I wrote in very controlled situation. I was practically anal about the whole thing of knowing everything that was going to happen right off the bat. And it helped. It helped tremendously,
Hmm.
because I developed the discipline as I went. The last 10 books I've written, I would say, for example, have been much more freeform. And I've let myself go away from the outlining process as being quite as mandatory a requirement as it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm letting myself free think a little bit more about how the story should go. I don't know if people will find that disturbing or not, but that's it. And I find that, particularly at my age, and with my career behind me, as far as it is at this point, that you can pretty much do anything you want to. We're talking back again about the field and so on. There have been so many changes. I'm like in a different world than I was when I started. Everything
Hmm.
is different. So I have a lot of latitude about where I go and what I do and how I do it. And because I've never missed a deadline, I've got that record, that perfect record, that says he will write the story, he will turn it in on time, it will be proofed and edited to to the extent that he's capable of doing this in a reasonable way. And then, you'll have it on when he says you'll have it. And I've lived off of those words with Anne Grohl, thank goodness, and she's been eternally grateful that I am that writer.
Hmm.
So that's helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm sure. And because I know that's one of the big things is that it's tough sometimes to find folks who do that, who can hit those deadlines on a regular basis. As a person who's worked with different authors and things, it's
Right,
everyone's life situation is different, right?
right.
But the reality is that that is highly valued, right? So I can get why,
I
she
think I,
appreciates.
I, I always kid everybody that the reason I'm this way is because I was a lawyer for 17 years. And,
Hmm.
and lawyers are dreadful in terms of being organized because that's all they got. You got to be organized all the time. You got to know what's going to happen. Where does P go before Q, or is it the other way around? Everything is got some kind of structure to it. So
Yeah.
if you live that life long enough, as I did for 17 years, then you automatically shift into that mode when you're working on your writing. Um,
Hmm.
and I left that behind with Magic Kingdom for sale, uh,
Hmm.
and moved on from there. But that early learning process was eased to a great extent by the fact that I had that legal training and I had that sense of organizational skill that was required.
Well, and for folks who may not know, by the way, the Magic Kingdom for Sale, that's your Landover
That's the
series.
Landover books. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I get off on the different titles, but yeah, it's the Landover books, and I've got 6 of those out. I haven't written one now since, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something like that. So I'm kind of off that series. People say, when are you going to write another Magic Kingdom book? And I say,
Hmm.
just as soon as they make the movie. Depend upon it, I'll write another one. Up to that point, I'm not so sure because I sort of said what I wanted to say about Ben Holiday and his life
Yeah.
and moved on to some other things. So that's, but it's kind of fun not knowing what you're going to do next, too.
Hmm.
That uncertainty about where it's going to go. What's going. I don't have trouble with ideas. I get ideas all the time, and I make notes, and I this, that, and the other thing. And I have 4 or 5 books that are sitting around in various stages of being unwritten, and partially written, wholly written, but not happily so. And I just don't use them because they just don't feel like they are important enough to throw into the hopper. But it's good to always know that if you need an idea, you can probably come up with it, and you just have to
Yeah.
give yourself some time and space.
I have to wonder, you've just revealed that there are books that no one has seen. Do you worry about people years from now hauling these out and publishing them and and you going, no, there's a reason I didn't want that published?
Well, there are 2 things. One, I'll be dead, so I won't care.
You won't care.
The other thing is that I live in a household of, uh, let's say, ferocious women protectors.
Hmm.
They will not ever release anything that they don't feel I would have released on my own. And they probably would be careful about releasing anything, just period. But I've already said, you should do what you feel is the best for you.
Yeah.
You're the ones going to be still walking around if it gets to that point. So
Right.
uh, it's not like I've written things that I'm keeping that I think are putrid. It's just that I'm not good enough or complete enough at this time. And I'm not one of those authors who feels like, well, once you're gone, you're gone. You should never let your work be touched again. I'm
Hmm.
more in favor of saying, well, this series started, get somebody else to finish it. Get somebody else to write Shannara books or Magic Kingdom books or whatever. That's perfectly okay. That's not one of the phobias I live with. I have plenty of others, but not that one.
It's interesting you're talking about that. And sometimes I see authors or creators take real ownership of the thing they've made. And
Mhm.
it's like, it's my thing and this is how I'm going to do it. But I feel like once you give it to an audience, like even just how you pronounce Shannara,
Yeah.
once you give it to an audience, they're going to make it their own in a way. How does
And
that feel? How does that feel to
that's
you?
and using the word Shannara is a good example because everybody in the whole frickin' world was saying Shannara.
Uh-huh.
And, I just learned early on if I wasn't going to do a pronunciation guide of some sort, which I didn't particularly feel like doing, people were going to say the words the way they wanted to say them. And I thought, well, when you sell your book, you're basically giving away the rights to all of it, and it becomes the property of the person who has the book. And
Right.
aren't they entitled to like the parts they like and not like the other parts and say the words the way they feel comfortable to them? So I never have felt that. And the perfect example of this is when I was involved in the TV show several years back. And I was having in early talks with the two writers that were doing, mainstreaming the process, and they said, so Terry, how many more of the Shannara books do you think you'll write? And I said, well, none. First of all, because that's not the way you say it. And they said, really? And I said, no, it's Shannara. I mean, no, that's not right. It's Shannara. And they said, well, we're not going to say it that way. And I said, well, that's the way I say it. And they said, well, that's not the way most of your fans say it. So we're going with them. And I said, oh, well, I put it out that way. I can't take it back now.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's just it, is that there is this sort of idea that who sort of owns the sort of mind share of what you've created once you put it out into the world. And a lot of people make it, in a sense, they become very attached to it and it becomes part of them in a sense, right?
Well, maybe for some people that's true. Maybe really the work that was done, all the work that was done, and all of the positive thinking that went into it came from them. I find that it's much more sobering not to go that route, to understand that you're getting help all the time. You're working for a publisher, so editors are going to have a lot to say about it. There's the people who do the artistic work. There's the people that do the headers and the footnotes and all of that. There is the sales force. Are they not to have anything to say about anything? That's just crazy. And I get good ideas all the time from other people. And I'm not claiming that every idea I ever had was my idea. They've been shared. And as Lester, going back to Lester Del Rey, told me early on, when I wrote a book right after Sword of Shannara that was not very good. And he said, really, Terry, you should put this aside, preferably in a deep pocket of a drawer somewhere, and never take it out again. And I said, well, why do you feel this way so strongly? And they said, it's a good idea to stick with what you know, number one. And number two, the wheel has already been invented. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you don't have to write something that's never been seen before, that is so original, everybody will be astonished. She said, that's taking on too much for anybody. Just write a good story, tell a good story. And I've lived by that ever since, about 1986.
I love that, because one of the things that I hear sometimes is people get down on things like tropes, but I feel like a trope is really something that resonates so powerfully with people that it gets used again and again. I think people just don't like when they're used badly. It's not that they don't like the tropes, they just don't like when you do them badly.
Yeah, right? I agree with you, and I think that's right. And the problem is that people get possessive, like you say, about these types of things, and they're worried that they will be hauled out because of the fact that they sound like somebody else. Well, guess what? I've been down that road. Everything that bad that could possibly have been said about me was said about me with Sword of Shannara. Oh, ripping off Tolkien, ripping off J.R.R. Well, once you've lived through that and you come out unscathed, basically, it's easy to say, I was writing in the Tolkien tradition, but I'm not Tolkien. I don't hold myself up as the next coming of the great man. I do the best I can with what I'm doing, and I tell my stories, and I tell them in my voice, and that's good enough. And that's what my editor told me early on. He said, you're going to get you're going to have half of your readers are going to absolutely think you're the next coming. And the other half of the readers are going to string you up from the nearest light pole if they get their hands on you. And it's just neither one of them is really there. And in one of the first interviews reviews that I had was by Frank Herbert. And Frank Herbert wrote a great review in the New York Times that basically said, there's some of this, there's some of that. The balance is pretty good, and overall the book is a good book. And I thought, fair enough, that I can live with that.
Well, how do you do that? How do you have that stuff out there and then just push it away? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just have to plow through it, right?
Well, I don't. First of all, I'm not one of those people who reads their reviews.
Right.
I don't feel like I need the validation, particularly now. In the beginning, I had
Yeah.
to sort of, I made a scrapbook of sort of Shannara with every review I could find and then put it away, for posterity or whatever. But the point is there's nothing much you can accomplish with reading your reviews. Some people are going to say you're great. Some people are going to say you're not. So what
Yeah.
does this do for you? Well, it doesn't really do anything for you one way or the other. What I look at are the sales figures.
Mm-hmm.
Is the book selling? Is it popular? Do people like it? If they don't, then it's important that you try to find out why they don't like it, or what is it about it they don't like, or something like that. Because that's the thing that determines your future in
Yeah.
this business. If you're selling books, you're probably going to work. If you're not selling books, you're probably going to have to own up to the possibility you're going to have to do something else.
Well, and I think that's something that a lot of people sometimes forget, is that the business is such a massive part of this, right?
Yes,
That the
very
books that
much.
we love, the movies, the games, the everything, the music, if the business piece isn't there, we don't see it. We don't get it.
No, we don't. And in the beginning, I did all of the things that young authors are supposed to do because I was married to Judine. Judine is a former DM for Walden Books. She's been, run a whole 3 states full of bookstores. She's got this whole background. So she knows all the bookstore people. And so I'd go around and she'd take me around, introduce me, and the bookstore people would tell me how the business worked. They taught me how it works. They taught me how they decide what they're going to do with things, and how you buy a space and all of this sort of thing. And I got taken to the remainder files and I got taken to where they destroyed the books, so that I had that background that you don't get much anymore in this business, because there's, number one, there's no one to do it. And number two, there's no time for it. So I kind of knew exactly what I was letting myself in for right from the beginning. And, I had an editor like Lester who was very practical and just said, this doesn't matter. Just ignore it. Write your books. If you write a good book, it'll get sold.
Well, you talked a lot. It's funny because at the end of the day, that is what it comes down to, right? Is that
Mhm.
if people are reading it and liking it, that's good, right? At the end of the day, that's a good book because it's doing something for people. It's making them happy. It's bringing something into their life, and if they're buying it, we know that that's true. So,
Yeah, I think that in my case, I always have felt strongly about the books I've written.
yeah.
I don't have any one book that I wish I hadn't written.
Hmm.
I don't have any one book. I have a couple books I particularly like, but
Mhm.
by and large, I like them all. And I like what I did with them. It gives me great pleasure to write a book from beginning to end. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this still. I wouldn't have to if I didn't absolutely love what I do. And
Yeah.
I haven't started to slip yet to a point where, although I came close last year, but I haven't slipped yet to a point where I feel like maybe I should rethink whether I can do another book. In fact,
Hmm.
I'm still writing a book a year without too much difficulty. Uh, my memory banks are not quite as good as they used to be, particularly uh, in terms of names, Tom. I just
Hmm.
I have a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, let me ask, when you were talking about books that you love, do you mind if I ask what one or two of those are, the ones that you feel that
of
you're
mine?
just, yeah, that of your own, that you just feel
Oh, of
really,
my own? Well,
yeah.
I thought Running with the Demon was about as good a book as I can write.
Okay.
I'm fond of Elfstones because everybody else is fond of Elfstones. And when I wrote that, I wrote it under a lot of duress. I had to write it and rewrite it numerous times. I got beaten up really good over it. But at the end of the day, everything I wanted to happen with that book pretty much happened. Um,
Yeah.
and then, I like the whole beginning of the Genesis of Shannara series with the street kids and Safeco Field being a bunker where they're all hiding out and defending against the evil things that are out in the city, which is getting to be more and more true, by the way. I sort of prophesied the future, I think.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
Well, those books mean quite a bit to me. Street Freaks. I wrote Street Freaks with no publisher and no expectation of having it published by anybody but myself. And people like that book.
Yeah.
And they've been coming around recently. When are you going to do another Street Freaks book? And, So that's a kind of a verification of worth that I appreciate having. And
Yeah.
I just, you just do the best you can all the time. That's all.
Well, it's really nice though when you can look back at your things, and be able to see stuff that you feel really good about, right? Because sometimes that's hard for creatives to do, is to look back and like what they've created after the fact.
I have to say that one of the blessings that I have had, if I can use that word
Hmm.
without being hauled in by somebody or other, is that the people that read my books talk to me a lot about what they're reading and I'm astonished at the fact that somebody will come along and say, "Well, Wizard at Large was your best book." Oh, Black Unicorn. No, it was Black Unicorn. That was your best book. No, it was the third book. And, they have a wide variety of feelings about these books. And to me, that's the biggest sign of success is you've written a bunch of books that people don't just talk about one book. They talk about all of them. And
Yeah.
that the community, the Shannara community, is very widely divided on which books they think are the best books and which ones they're connected to. And I like that very much. I
Yeah.
really like that diversity.
So I want to ask you really quick, going back to Child of Light for a minute.
Mm.
It sounds like everyone that when you first wrote it and you started showing it to folks, they're like, this is fantastic. I mean, it kind of made the second one a no-brainer, obviously. And that one is coming out in October. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. And
October
that's,
11th, I think.
hang on, let me there we go. Daughter of Darkness, October 11th is when
That's
that's
it.
coming out. Yep. And so how many books all total do you expect in this sort of this arc that you're writing? Do you have an idea, or are you still working?
I don't have a firm idea. I know
Mhm.
I'm writing a third one.
Okay.
Uh, and I can tell you that this book is not going to be like anything that I've done before.
Hmm.
And I think I'm going to break some old barriers with the way this book plays out. But I decided I didn't want to write another Shannara series for
Mhm.
various obvious reasons, but also because I've done it. And if I was going to do a series with Child of Light, I thought it had to have some serious breaks. So writing the first one was easy because I was writing about Oris, and it was all about Oris discovering who she was and where she came from,
Right.
and discovering about her new world and discovering about the antipathy that lay between the humans and the Fae people and how that was playing out. So that was a whole book. Second book is very much more of the same, but at a deeper level and with a new major villain involved. But the third book is going to feature a different character entirely,
Oh
and
my.
it's going to examine what happens when you're not just one thing but two things.
Hmm.
I know.
Interesting.
I just thought it's time to do some different types of things, but I didn't want to do what everybody else is doing out there. I like to do something that suggests other things about what's out there. Uh,
Yeah.
and I thought, let's put A with Z together and see what we get. And so that's kind of where I am with it. I haven't started work on it yet, but I'll probably start writing it in June right now because I'm in the midst of rewrites of another book entirely. So I'll probably start working on it then, and I'm very excited about that. And after that, I don't know what I'm going to do.
So now you're going to be writing some books while you're starting to go back to conventions, right? For
Yeah,
the first time in a couple of years. Like a
yeah,
lot of us haven't really been to conventions in a while.
yeah. I'm afraid of conventions.
and
There's too many things there that I don't want anything to do with.
and your next one is RavenCon, is that right? That's
That's right.
April 29th. And where's
April
that at
20th.
again?
And what?
Where's RavenCon at
Oh,
again?
where is it? It's in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. All right.
It's at a hotel somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't have that information right
Oh,
in
that's
front.
all right. I put the URL there so people can go
But
check
I'm
it
out there. People can look it up. It's on the website, my website too, as a matter of fact.
out. Okay.
Um,
Great.
I actually agreed to do RavenCon 3 years ago
Oh, wow.
because I was their first guest 25 years ago at that point, and they said we'd like to have you back again one more time before we get rid of you, or you get rid of us.
You're
So I
set.
said, okay, I would love to come back, and they and then COVID hit, and so I lost a couple 3 years, I think,
Yeah.
and
So
but they hung in there.
So let me ask, being a guest at a convention, right? That's not something most of us will ever be. What is that? I mean, how is that? Is it fun? Is it a lot of pressure? Is it exhausting? I mean, what's it like to be that guest that everyone is lining up to see and waiting to talk to?
I go into a different mode at conventions and
Hmm.
on publishing tours. I go into the I will not stop. I will be happy. I will be conversational. I will be
Yeah.
friendly. I will do all the positive things that I can possibly do till I fall down on the floor.
Mm.
And that works well. Then I come home and I spend a couple of weeks trying to get back together again in some fashion because it takes being on the road for anything that involves your work takes a hell of a lot out of you.
Yeah.
And that was back when I was 50. Now it takes so much out of me that I crash and burn every night. And I have to pull it back together again the next day because it takes a lot of effort and time in order. It takes a lot of time and effort just to be friendly.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I seem to be a friendly person, but I'm not really all that friendly because I'm a writer, which means I'm shut away for most of the time, which doesn't breed friendliness. It breeds something else entirely.
You chose a career that involved being locked alone in a room most of
I
the time,
know
right?
it's exactly right, and it's very much that way. And you come out of those. My wife always says, "Can you chip her up and talk like a human being for a while?" Things of that sort, because I'll be deep in something that I'm thinking about, and so there's a lot of. Did you just hear what I said, or anything I've said for the last 25 minutes? No. You really do have to gear up for that, and conventions demand a lot out of you if you're going to make the most out of them. And if you're going to, and there's no point in going to convention if you're not going to be a decent person.
Yeah.
After all, you're there to sell yourself and your books, and you
Right.
can't do that if you go in there with an attitude, and if you're not willing to put yourself out there a little bit to make people feel like it's been worth their while to spend time waiting in line to see you.
Right.
You can't do that, and at least I can't do it. Not having a guilty conscience. So
Well, it sounds a lot like performance, right? At the end of the
it
day,
is exactly,
and you're
exactly
going on stage and you're taking on, it's a character, but it's you. So you're kind of playing yourself, but you're playing
right.
yourself in a very forward, energetic, you know, demonstrative way throughout that
Trying to
process.
without alienating too many people in the process.
Right. Well, I will say that, you've always been an amazing guest when I've seen you at shows and when you were at Gen Con, for example. I know a lot of
Oh
folks
yeah, I
were
remember
there,
Gen Con.
and
Yeah.
it's appreciated, right? And I think part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is I hoped that people could understand the amount of work and effort and energy that goes into being that guest, right? That it's not just something that magically happens, but it's something that you actually put the effort in and you're doing it on behalf of the folks who are there to see you. And I think that's appreciated and people should know that.
Well, I think they understand. I've spent a lot of time in conventions where I saw one way or another, interacted one way or another with guests who had an attitude.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to say, look at yourself, listen to yourself. Why are you being this way? This isn't going to win you any friends. People don't look for the next great rebel. They're
Mm.
looking for people who they can converse with and who they can have some kind of a relationship with. And so they feel like there was a point in reading your books and etc. That didn't seem too unreasonable to expect. And I just feel like you have to meet them halfway at least, and not be somebody who looks like they've had too much to drink the night before, or who looks like basically you hate the guts of every single person who walks into this room and wish they'd all just you know
Yeah.
you know
Wander off and disappear into the
wander
darkness.
off and do something with your life.
Yeah. Well, I think that, that is something that some folks struggle with. And I can understand how they might try to do it and just it's not for them, but I don't
Yeah.
think it helps them. It doesn't do them any favors. And we're learning more and more how much, what a creative person does impacts how people view the work that they create. Right. And that's it's something that's the truth of our world today.
Well, if we had an hour, I could go into this in much greater depth than I will in the next few minutes. But I
Hmm.
did do a Zoom event with one of my fellow writers a while back, talking about how things have changed in the business from when we started out in the 70s
Yeah.
and where we are now. And of course, the first thing my editor told me when I said, "Well, am I going to get to go on tour?" He says, "No, not for a while, not until you're good and ready." And I said,
Hmm.
well, I'd kind of like to go somewhere and be in a bookstore. And no, you just write your books. Your job is to write the books. Our job is to publish them. The reader's job is to read them. Don't let yourself ever come between the reader and the book. No
Hmm.
kidding. No kidding. Can you imagine anybody saying that today and not being laughed out of the room? I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
there's no way, because now it's all about the connection between the book and the writer. People want to know that, and it's made available on social media in dozens of different ways. And we spend a huge amount of time learning about who these writers are. I don't think it's made my life any better. In
Hmm.
a few cases, maybe. I'm really only interested in the book. And sometimes there's something there that makes me want to know more about the writer. But for the most part, it's the book that counts. It's the job that they've done. And if there's something, I had something happen not too long ago with a writer named T.J. Klune, who writes out of England,
Hmm.
uh, and wrote The House by the Cerulean Sea, or The House of the Cerulean Sea, and then he did another one too. That book broke my heart. And without getting into what it was about, I'll just say it was so wonderful that I went out of my way to track him down and tell him how much I loved that book and how much I hoped he would do another one like it. And that's what you're looking for as a reader in a book. It's something that just changes your life because of, in any number of different ways, but something that you cannot forget.
Yeah, and, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you is if there were books that you've been reading lately. And let me just check here. I think this is the book that you're talking about, The
Yeah.
House in the
The House
Cerulean
on
Sea.
the Cerulean Sea.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that I was going to ask if you have even time to read, if that's something you have time for in your life, and it sounds like you do. It sounds like you managed to fit in other
Well,
books.
yeah, these days I do. These days I allot 3 o'clock in the afternoon on to reading.
Hmm.
And we have a grace period at that time in our lives where we just sit around and we don't talk and we just read books. And it's wonderful. I mean, that's how you get something read. We also read other times too, but that's the time before I would work till 5 o'clock. And then I
Yeah.
would say time for dinner, and then I'd read after dinner. But no more, I'm not doing that anymore, because number one, my period of productive creativity runs about 4 hours a day, maybe
Hmm.
five. And then after that, I'm just, mumbling on in some incomprehensible way. So, but the reading part of life is how I began all this, and I still read constantly, and I read books of all sorts, all over the place,
Hmm.
because I feel it's important as a writer, if you want to be any good, not to just read one thing, and not to just read in one area, and to be willing to take a risk and read something that's recommended to you. I get a
Hmm.
lot of books recommended by Judine that I would never have read before, and I'm so grateful that she recommended them now. And I think you need that in your life.
As a
I,
writer, some of the best lessons I've learned from reading other books are reading outside of the usual fantasy and sci-fi that I enjoy. My wife reads very different sorts of books. She reads a lot of mysteries. She reads a lot of crime books and novels. And, I've picked up some of those. I've been like, wow, that is really a great story. And I love
yeah,
how they did that. I would never have seen that in one of the books that I normally read. And it's very a good way to learn.
yeah, I think that's true. I tend to read a lot of see, I'm having trouble with words these days. A lot of I want to say literary fiction, but
Hmm.
present day fiction. And
Yeah.
I do read a lot of mysteries, and I read a lot of science fiction, fantasy too. But sometimes I'll read nonfiction. I'm just kind of all over the place. If I see something that interests me or looks like it might be interesting, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
And I get disappointed sometimes, and I've learned how to put a book down and say, "That's it. I'm not reading anymore." I used to make myself read everything all the way through, even though it was, torture. These days, I don't feel like I can do that, and so I have to pick and choose, and then try to make the most of getting what I can out of the books that are important.
Yeah.
But they vary. They do vary.
And do you watch much television or movies at all, or is it mainly books as your primary entertainment?
Well, Mark, because I have reached an era in my life where I am somewhat successful. When I built this house that I'm in now back in 10, I put in a movie theater.
Oh, nice.
I did. I have a 106-inch screen and projector, and I collect movies, and I have access to 8 or 10 different stations within the freelance area. And I get Amazon and all those. So we do watch a lot of movies. We watch a lot of series, but it allows us to do it at our leisure. And when it's important to do so, and we get right through the series and go right on to something else, or we say, that's enough of that, let's go play some more Scrabble.
Yeah.
But I don't watch regular TV at all. I might watch a sporting event, but for the most part, I don't give myself over to watching my shows or my movies on TV. But I do watch my movies sometimes without going to the theaters these days, because I'm not convinced yet I want to go back to a theater. So I watch movies on the screen because there's enough of them, there I can do.
The amount of content's amazing.
Yeah.
And so let me ask, what has Terry Brooks really been enjoying lately that you've been watching, that you've been sort of hooked on?
Well, I've watched a lot of the, I get into habits, and the habit I got into for a while there was watching all those British mystery shows and family history shows, along with, All Animals Great and Small. And any, I like the British shows. I think they're well thought out. I think they're well acted. I'll watch anything with Nicola Walker in it. I watch Call the Midwives. I've never seen. I never thought I would see and learn so much about birthing them babies. But boy, have I learned a lot about that on a very intelligently written show. And Doc Martin. I like Doc Martin because he reminds me of me. Things of that sort. I do a lot of watching of those. I don't, Mrs. Maisel is one of my favorites. Forgetting the British for a minute. I like Mrs. Maisel. She's got a real character. She is a real character, and I don't tend to watch a lot of science fiction fantasy shows. I know that comes from a shocker, but I don't. I did see Dune. And I do watch some Star Wars movies now and again. And I don't know. I got into that Mandalorian thing. Is it the Mandalorian? Is that
Mandalorian? Yeah.
Mandalorian, yeah. I got into that for a while, but then I kind of lost interest and went away. So it just depends. Something's always coming along that's new and wonderful. I watch I have access now due to my location to all the movies that are coming up for Academy Awards about February. So I get hold of those and we go right through them to see what's there and what isn't. And that is a real experience because they're also different, and I watched them all this year, and I thought, what a wide selection of differing movies here. And the one that I thought should have won the Best Picture of the year was probably Coda, which did. But I have to say that the next one, very close on its heels, was the Japanese movie Drive My Car.
I haven't seen it.
Amazing movie. Structurally, it may be the best movie I've ever seen because you learn everything you need to know about it in the first 20 minutes. But you don't remember it until you get further and deeper into it and you say, oh yeah, that's right, And then when you get to the end, it all comes together so perfectly. I just loved it. I thought that if I were a writer, that's the movie I would want to have written.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, there's stuff out there.
Well, I think that's interesting too, because that's one of the things that people wonder about is whether people watch things differently. And I think they kind of do. I think that you're often looking at more from a structural, a craft point of view that other people may not. And it's not, that's the perfect example. The Japanese movie, what was it called again?
Drive My Car.
Drive My Car is a perfect example of that.
Good example, yeah. I think that as an artist working in this field, we tend to read things with a red pencil in our hand. Maybe not really, but you tend to catch the mistakes that somebody else has made. You tend to see the things that you would have done differently. You can't help yourself because that's the way your mind works. And I do that all the time. And if I find somebody making too many mistakes, they're out the door.
Yeah.
I want to know they proofed their book. I want them to put the work in I put in, damn it.
Well, and I think part of it for me is the time that I find that I really love something is when I stop doing that. When I get
Oh,
like 3 chapters in through a book and I'm like going, oh my God, I stopped assessing it. I've just been reading it and enjoying it. But we
yeah.
only have about 5 minutes left here. I do want to talk about a couple of things that I know folks will want. First, would you mind saying hi to Kathy? She's a huge fan and she's been watching the whole time. So I just want to say, if you could just give her a quick hello.
I would give her a quick hello. I'd give her a quick hug if I was there. Hello, Kathy. Nice that you're watching. I appreciate it.
Thanks for doing that. So one of the things I told Joe I was going to ask you about is something that people watching Gen Con TV always want to know about is this the only Shannara role-playing game we're going to get? Are we going to get something more at some point in the future, do you think, that so people can tell their own stories around the table?
I haven't had to answer that question for a long time because the only thing we ever get requests on is the Shannara books, and all the Shannara rights are tied up in the language that doesn't cede any of the rights back to me until later this year.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have anything to sell right now in that market.
Oh, that's interesting.
They want something down the road, but that's what happens if you make a TV show or a movie or whatever. They tie the rights up for 5 years at least.
So that's the sort of thing that people don't recognize, right? They're like, well, why don't we get this? We want this so bad. Why won't they let us? It's like, it's not the author that's saying no a lot of times. It's
No,
just,
it isn't. I don't control that until I get it all back, and then I'll control it, and I'll just sell the whole thing all over again.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
In my dreams, right?
Uh-huh. All right. Well, that's about all the time that we have. I really want to thank you again for being on the show. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you weaving about through a variety of topics with me tonight. And from the comments that we're getting, a lot of folks are appreciating this as well. And a lot of praise for the Drive My Car movie as well. People are going, yes, thumbs up on that one. So,
well, I appreciate being the second guest, and I appreciate being on the same screen or in the same area with you again after it's been a while since we've done that. But it's good to be back, and I'm happy to see that we're both still alive and kicking.
We are. And Your Daughter of Darkness comes out on October 11th, so we'll be looking forward to that. You'll be at RavenCon on April 29th, so folks can see you there. And in the meantime, we'll watch for you online. And thank you very much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to all of readers and people who tuned in today. Thank you very much.
Well, folks, thanks for being part of the show today. We really appreciate you coming by to talk to us and to hear Terry talk about writing and about the craft and the business, and listen to us sort of wax on the things that we think are cool, like the movies and books and things, and the BBC crime dramas that I personally watch way too many of. Next week, we have a very cool guest. We have Eric Nunnally visiting with us. So please drop by next week at 7 p.m. We're going to be doing another show then. And in the meantime, there isn't that pretty much wraps things up for this week. So I just want to thank everybody for watching, and we will see you next time. Take care.